I wrote a book called Manipurated, and the idea behind it, the sort of premise behind the book was this. I really cut my teeth in the search industry. I worked at Google. I was one of the early employees at Google on their marketing team. And I learned a lot while working there about the shady side of the internet, the sort of the underbelly, the people who inhabit the dark corners of the internet. Some of you saw Kevin Lee earlier, and he is also an expert in that area. It's just something that happens to be a topic of some interest to me. And just through the course of conversation, I had a lot of memories come back to me somewhat recently when I started thinking about this book. Business owners, particularly small business owners, who were kind of describing things that happened to them in the course of doing business, and it came back to me. I thought, a lot of those characters, if you in the SEO business at all, black hat, white hat, it all starts to sound a little familiar. And there's different terms for it. AstroTurfing is one that came up, I know, this morning, but we're going to talk about that because it's a really, really important thing. Why is it so important? Well, not everything can be done through influencers. If we could pay for influence with celebrities or folks like we just saw on the panel, our lives would be so much easier, wouldn't they? That's kind of the way it used to be. We call up a reporter or talk to a celebrity or an influencer, and our life, basically, we've checked the marketing box, at least to some degree. But things are, of course, very different for us now. 92% of consumers, which is pretty much everyone at this point, except our grandmothers, 92% of people read online reviews when they're doing research for anything. Travel, software, doctors, dentists, everything has some kind of review platform associated with it. And the thing about it isn't so much that everyone reads these reviews. I mean, they're there, and that's kind of a thing. The thing about it is that we trust them so much, almost more than we trust our aunts, our friends, our mothers. We put a lot of trust in these reviews. There's all sorts of different studies about trust of online reviews. We trust strangers' opinions more than we trust ourselves. So let's just take a look at what some of these reviews look like. I'll read some of these to you. I'm not going to read the whole thing. They're kind of long. So here's Emma H. She did this review of this. This happens to be a pizza place in Cambridge, Massachusetts. 1 star. 1 star. You know when you were drunk and everything tastes good? Well, you know something sucks when you are drunk and it still tastes horrible. This is her review of the pizza place. You are better off going to a gas station and getting a hot dog. That's what she said. So that was the slap. Here comes a kiss, a 5-star review. This happens to be a hotel, actually one I've stayed in. This is not my review. It's a Hilton Garden Inn property in Fargo, North Dakota. Really nice hotel. And this is a 5-star review. What I love about this is on TripAdvisor, the hotel actually replied to it and said, thank you. They didn't need to. There was no criticism in there whatsoever. It was just a 5-star review, wonderful stay. And they still said, thank you. That's something that is actually somewhat difficult for marketing people to get in the habit of doing. We love the praise, but we don't necessarily take a step back and say, people like to be thanked. If they've given us criticism, they like to be thanked. There was a reason they did that in the first place, and it's not necessarily always altruism. Another 1-star review, another slap. So sheepishly, I have to admit, this is actually a client of mine. We've got some work to do. They run apartment communities in Southern California, sort of places with pools and gyms, that kind of place. And, people get kicked out because they didn't pay their rent. Things happen, and they have a whole bunch of really bad reviews because of that. Ones like this, if you're asking yourself whether you should live here, my suggestion would be, for the love of God, no. And this really stings. Part of the challenge for them, they have a very low rating for most of their communities. They don't ever ask anybody for reviews. So anything they get, they just get. And of course, very few people rate or review their apartment community. I would think to do that almost ever. So the fact that they're not asking, that's kind of the process we're going through with them right now. But if you work in B2B, you may think, I don't have to, I can leave now. I can go to happy hour. I don't have to worry about reviews in B2B? The truth is you do. Their G2 Crowd Trust Radius, they've got you covered if you're in B2B. This happens to be a software company. Review says, essentially, that the user interface is dated, reports are hit and miss, and the image hosting lacks functionality. Not really a glowing review of any software. Definitely some feature sets in there that maybe you could improve on, but not really something I would want someone saying about my software if I was marketing software. I referenced doctors earlier, and certainly the healthcare industry has actually been very deeply impacted by ratings and reviews, in part because it's so regulated. If any of you work in the healthcare industry, you know what I mean. Very regulated. It's hard for a doctor to jump into a conversation and say, sorry about that, misdiagnosing that mole on your cheek. Try better next time. It's just not, that's a step too far for a lot of physicians. Here's a really great review of Dr. Dimitrios Motakis in Toronto, plastic surgeon. Patient says, fantastic doctor, wonderful staff. Amanda is the sweetest, nicest medical office receptionist. I always look forward to my appointments here. Now, a couple of things I want to point out about this profile. Number one is if my doctor looked like that, I would look forward to my appointments too. But he also clearly got the message on branding. I mean, look at that photo. Yes, he's a plastic surgeon. You would expect him to have a beautiful photo, but he's done a pretty good job. He has 58 reviews on here. He must be, at some point, saying to patients, I really like you as a patient, and I would like to have more patients like you. Would you please review me? I'm sure some form of that conversation is happening because he's got 58 reviews and he's a 5-star doctor. And it can't all be because of his looks. I mean, come on. So what has happened to us as a society that we love to beat up on companies we do business with, places we shop at? I mean, these are like mom and pop shops. In many cases, these are not big brands. These are small businesses. What happened to us that we turned that corner and we like to beat up on people? But primarily, what can we as a marketing industry do about it? What do we do about it? There's a lot we can do about it. We can't stop it from happening, but there's a lot of things we can do to make it work harder for us. That was sort of the premise I had when I started writing this book. And I referenced some conversations that led me to this. Actually, one in particular with a friend of mine who has a hair salon. He actually lives in New York now. His salon is only a couple of blocks from here on 9th Avenue. But at the time, he lived in Los Angeles, where I live. He had a salon there. And it's a small, he had 4 chairs in his little salon. This was not a mega business, right? But it was everything to him. This was his bread and butter. It was what pays his bills, what pays his rent. And he kind of ran the full gamut of experience any business owner experiences. Crazy one-time customer who came in and just completely blew things out of proportion, slammed him on Yelp. And he wasn't really, pardon me, he wasn't really paying attention to his reviews on Yelp. Lesson number 1. But when he saw it, he just had that knee-jerk reaction like, oh, shit, this is not going to be good for me. I have 5 reviews on Yelp, and now I have one 1-star review, and my star rating just fell off a cliff. I have no idea what to do about it. And he kind of said, in the conversation with him, I'm like, Bobby, first of all, I mean, I hate to point out the painfully obvious here, but you've got to be paying attention to your reviews on Yelp. This is lesson number 1 for you. But he said, I just feel like these sites, they kind of stack the cards against me. Because you talk to somebody at Yelp, if you ever get that chance, they're really not very helpful. They're not going to say, well, magically, we're going to get you a bunch of new reviews. They'll certainly be happy to take your money, which is something that ultimately he experienced too. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Anyone know this? It's fine. So, I mean, she's etched in, at least in the US, she's etched in our national memory. We know the story. We don't need to rehash that here. Last year, she released a book, and as part of that, she gave a TED Talk. And I just wanted to point out one of the things that Monica said, because it was really, I thought, it jibed in my head, it gelled for me, and I thought it was an interesting point. She said at one point in her talk, overnight, I went from being a completely private figure to a publicly humiliated one worldwide. I was patient zero of losing a personal reputation on a global scale almost instantaneously. This rush to judgment, enabled by technology, led to mobs of virtual stone throwers. So what she was talking about was the fact she was one of the first people, maybe not the first example, one of the first, who went through a big crisis in the midst of all of humanity being able to go online and talk about her in a public forum. And in those days, it was discussion boards and forums. It wasn't on Yelp or Facebook, but same thing, right? But astroturfing has long roots that go back way, way before Facebook happened. So her experience is like what a lot of brands experience, a lot of businesses experience, particularly lately. It seems like it's something that happens again and again. And it's sort of, she calls it cyberbullying, but we just call it business cyberbullying. It's the same thing. It behaves the same way, same monster, same behavior model, and I think it's probably the same reasons behind it. I'm not a psychologist, but I have to believe that that is the case. But the truth is, the reason we have to care about it, whether we're interested in psychology or in this topic at all, we have to care about it because our businesses are on the line, our brands are on the line, or our clients are. And this is really the battlefield for customers, particularly for prospective customers. If you've got a loyal set of customers and you say, I never need one more customer, maybe you don't need ratings and reviews. Is anyone in this room in that category? Probably not. We're here because we're in marketing. We are always looking for more customers. And this is where we will go to find them. So we have to care about it. The scary thing is when a consumer comes across a business that has that low rating, in 87% of the cases, they say, I'm not sure I want to do business with that company, or at least I'm going to investigate this a little further. 87% of people won't consider businesses with low ratings, although they will, 82%, so still a fairly high percentage, 82% will at least read a few reviews. They're not going to look at one and say, that must be representative, that one-star review that says you'd be better off buying a hot dog at a gas station. You know, people are smart enough. We're not all so easily won over. As I referenced, underpinning all of this is really a playbook. It has roots in the search engine optimization industry. So if this is something you know a lot about, if you're someone who's been doing SEO at any level, this is going to sound very familiar, what I'm about to say. But if you haven't, or you haven't touched that in a while, please pay close attention because it's an important concept that could be part of your playbook this year. Picture yourself walking into a grocery store. And you walk in, what's the first part of the grocery store that you typically see when you walk in? Produce section, unless you go in the exit door like I very often do, but typically you come across the produce section. And they make it big and bountiful and beautiful because they want you to feel like everything in this store is fresh. Would you shop at this store? Not likely. You might think, I don't know what happened in here, but I want no part of this experience whatsoever. I'm moving on. Versus someplace like this, a farmer's market. It's bountiful. Of course, you're gonna like, wow, I want to eat all of those things, and I don't even know what they are, but they look beautiful, and I want to eat them, or I want to figure out how to eat them. Well, this is the concept of freshness, right? I mean, grocery store A looks fresh. Grocery store B, not so fresh. The concept of freshness applies to websites too. It applies to content on the web as well. So this concept of freshness is one of the things that has made ratings and reviews so prominent, in part because of Google. Google is still the kingmaker for businesses. It's still the kingmaker for even sites like Yelp. And the thing about it is, as consumers, as people who buy things, we've adapted ourselves to this concept of freshness too, in part because there's so much of it on the web now. I mean, stuff on Yelp, how frequently is your favorite restaurant updated with new reviews? Like probably several times every single day, right? 69% of consumers say they don't even look at reviews that are more than 3 months old. So if you say, I don't care about reviews, I don't even want to be on the internet, I've got 2 reviews and they're 5-star, that's all I ever really even want. I just let it linger, I don't want to pick a fight here. You're probably going to be losing that battle at some point, because someone might look at those and say, that's from 2010. Are they even in business anymore? I can't discern if they're still in business. I'm going to have to actually call them and go check it out. So that's the concept of freshness. One of the interesting things about it is, I'm actually going to ask this as a question because it's one that I was shocked when I learned it. Can you guess the percentage of traffic that Yelp, all of its largesse, gets from Google every single month? Its percentage of search or web traffic. It's high. It's not quite that high. 75. 75% of Google's Yelp's traffic every month is coming from Google. So if we don't care about Google as marketing people, Yelp certainly does. Yelp cares a lot about Google and cares about sustaining itself there. So the love triangle is pretty much sites like Yelp, TripAdvisor, TrustRadius, G2 Crowd. They're fighting for space on Google and to a lesser extent on Bing. And they're all playing this game of freshness. The way you win over Google, Google trusts you if you have fresh content, right? The way you win that battle is by always having lots of fresh content. So in turn, as marketing people, the way we win a battle on Yelp or TripAdvisor is making sure they have the freshest content about us that they could possibly have. That is ground zero for sustaining a very, very good rating and review profile, wherever it may be, whether AutoTrader or TripAdvisor, anywhere. Make sure the stuff there is fresh because that puts you in this equation suddenly. Your business is now in the equation when it wasn't really built for it. I'm going to skip forward here. So somewhere along the road, something happened and things went a little sideways. And it doesn't all have to do with freshness, although that's really one of the core, that's the foundation on which the entire industry is built. But that's not where everything went a little wrong. I'm going to go back now and talk about the shady characters on the internet. And you can't do that without really confronting this thing about trust. Who do we trust and why? Can a rating and review site like Yelp, not to pick on it too much, but I like to, can they serve us as consumers, us as businesses as well, at least those of us in the room, and also their shareholders all at the same time and do it fairly and squarely? Tough thing to do, right? They're kind of in this awkward place. They need to make money. They need to keep their web traffic up. There's a certain way that they do that, and it may not always be to our benefit, the model that they adopt. And there's sort of 3 things that I discovered in research for this book, 3 ways, tangents that we're going to go down, 3 ways it went wrong. One is fake reviews, which is just such a devastatingly horrible, like morally repugnant industry. I won't even be able to fully touch on it today, but I'll use lots of adjectives. Profiteering, which is really what a lot of the sites, sort of at least their sales teams, is kind of how they behave, and we need to be able to respond to that. And then there are some larger things with the reputation management industry. I sort of work in that industry myself, so I don't have to paint with a super wide, I don't want to paint with a super wide brush there, but certainly there are some shady characters in the reputation management industry that we'll talk about. So the first problem that I encountered is this one of fake reviews. When Yelp went public, when Yelp filed to go public, in that filing they said one of the risks to our business is Yelp, 25% of the reviews that we get are fake. I would say it's a pretty big risk. They actually screen those 25% of the reviews, they screen those out. They take those out. Another study found that an additional 30% of the reviews that they found on Yelp were fake. So Yelp proactively takes that 25% out. This other study, I think it was MIT, found another 30% were fake. So it's clearly a real problem. We know that as marketing people. I mean, we are probably some of the most skeptical people you will ever meet when it comes to stuff. And I think we all kind of agree on that. The thing about it, it's really easy to write fake reviews. And if you even need an email address, that's all you need, and those are pretty easy to come by these days. I actually talked to a couple of people when I was writing my book, when I was doing the research. I talked to some folks and interviewed them who do this for a living. Like, their whole business is writing fake reviews. They were operating on Fiverr. If you know this site, Fiverr, where you can buy things for $5. So they were selling reviews for $5 on Fiverr, and they'll write whatever you want them to tell, whatever story. You just tell them what you want, where you want it, and they're going to go off and do it for you. This one particular young lady, Tina, it's not a real name, but we'll call her Tina. She doesn't just write reviews. She's a professional at this. She masks her IP address, so she tricks Amazon into thinking she's in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then Sacramento and Seattle. She knows how to do that. She's sort of like a method actor. She has personas she uses when she is writing these things to convince herself, primarily herself, that she is the army mom or the college student or the grandfather. She will take up basically any persona that you need her to do. And at least at the time, she was really good at tricking Amazon into thinking her reviews were verified by buying the item from Amazon, charging the client for it, and then getting her review marked as a verified purchase. You can still pull that scam off now, too. She doesn't do that anymore because she kind of got out of the business of Amazon reviews after they sued her. Things happen when you mess with the devil, sometimes mess with the bull, sometimes you get the horns. But last year, you may remember, actually, Amazon sued 1,200 people that they said, you're writing fake reviews on our system. It's not good for us. It's not good for consumers, and you need to stop. So talk about tip of the iceberg. I think 1,200 is probably 1%, 2%, if that. One of the things she said to me, it just floored me, and I'm not going to parse too much her words, but actually, I'll let you do it. I'll just read it to you, and you can parse her words. My one good review isn't going to make or break a business or a customer. As much as I embellish and write about businesses and products I haven't used, I try not to blatantly lie about what the product or business is capable of doing. And I didn't say this at the time. Maybe I should have. If I were more of a jerk, I probably would have. How can you, that's like, that sentence doesn't make sense. You haven't used it, so how could you not be blatantly lying if you're just telling people what they told you to say? That sounds kind of like blatantly lying. But nevertheless, you may be right half the time. She certainly sees, that's her worldview. That's the way she sees it. And the entire industry kind of operates that way. We're just trying to protect ourselves here. We've got stuff to sell people. Just, if you don't like it, return it. It's fine. Just tell them it's good. Pretend it's good, and it'll be fine. The thing about it is, this entire business, fake reviews, it's a zero-sum game. It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help me make a better purchase decision on an app or whatever. It doesn't help the business ultimately, because they're going to get caught, or if they don't have good products, they're going to go out of business. You can't stay in business forever with bad products. And it certainly doesn't help the place where it happens, Yelp or Amazon. That doesn't help them at all, because ultimately it makes them look illegitimate and shady. So that's the issue of fake reviews. Second one that I came across is related to, I call it profiteering. That was a picture of The Godfather that it somehow didn't make it in. And it sort of feels a lot like someone trying to take your lunch money to a degree. When someone from Yelp or G2 Crowd or Trust Radius, any site, calls you and says, hi, and I'm pleased to make your acquaintance. I've been looking at your profile on my site, and I discovered that you've got some kind of bad reviews on there. Well, if you give us some money, we can help you do special offers and codes, and we'll help you track your customers on our platform. And if you don't do that, I can't really promise what's going to happen. It might not go good for you. I don't know. But anyway, nice to meet you, and have a great day. That's sort of the tactic. And if you're a marketing person like us, you're like, go yourself, right? We kind of see through that to some degree. But if you're a business owner and your whole sort of heart and soul and your equity is on the line, you might think you might think about that a little bit more and think twice about, should I take that deal? Should I start paying Yelp to advertise on there? I don't know if that would go well for me. I can say anecdotally, I don't know if you guys have tried Yelp, in particular, Yelp advertising. I have clients who have tried it, and it just doesn't ever seem to do much for their business. I don't know if you guys have different experiences, but at least on Yelp, it doesn't ever seem to move the needle at all. It comes down to back to that conflict of interest thing. I mean, who is Yelp really in the business to serve? Ultimately, they're going to say there's our shareholders. Same with TripAdvisor, it's our shareholders. We've got to answer to somebody. And ultimately, we're not a nonprofit. We've got to answer to people who give us more, keep us in business. So that's kind of how it feels. But if you understand the perspective they're coming from, you're in a much stronger place. You can kind of push back on them and say, I need to understand what this is going to do for my business. I need you to convince me that this is about my business, not yours, because I don't feel that way right now. I feel like you're telling me about your business problems, and I got my own problems, and you're actually the one involved in that equation. So that's kind of how it goes. So the third category we'll talk about here is the reputation management industry as a whole. And this is a very broad brushstroke, so I will maybe be a little more specific about it. I found a few different pieces of it that really rubbed me raw. The first was, I suspected this was going to happen when I started researching the book. I anticipated I would find one of these stories, but when I actually found one of these stories, I just wanted to vomit. Because, I mean, it's so, like, it is really morally repugnant, the way some of these things happen. This happened to a group of friends of mine who are photographers, like wedding, baby photographers in San Francisco. It's a very complex sort of blackmail scheme, but basically what happened was they got through their website an inbound query from a potential customer. And it just said, I'm looking for someone for my bar mitzvah, and tell me your rates, and are you available on this date? And of course the photographer says, great, yes, I'm available, here's my rate card. And then never really heard back from that person after that. And then a couple weeks later, the person replies and says, I decided not to go with you in the end, but thanks for your information. By the way, I work in the reputation management industry, and I heard there was this thing going around with photographers being threatened with bad fake reviews and stuff. So should that ever happen, you can just call me, and I can delete those reviews and make them go away. If you've worked in digital for a minute, you know that that's not possible. You can't just delete a review unless you happen to be the one who wrote it. You don't delete a review, not just like that. You don't just make them go away. But that's what they said to these photographer friends. I mean, these are all small businesses. They're mostly just themselves. So, that kind of hit them a little sideways, like, never heard that before. That's weird. Whatever. Archive the email. And then, lo and behold, a couple weeks later, they get a menacing email from someone that says, you shot my cousin's wedding, and you did a really bad job, and someone tripped over you and fell and broke their vertebra. I don't know. We kind of went after them and said, I'm going to have everyone at the wedding write bad reviews about you on Yelp because you're such a terrible person. And at that point, the photographer's thinking, uh-oh. My absolute maximum review potential in a given week, how many events do you think a photographer might do? Like a wedding photographer might do two or three weddings in 1 week. So, a few bad reviews is going to stick with them a lot longer and sting for a lot longer than it would maybe a cafe who could have 50 reviews a day. So some of them sort of panicked. Good thing in their case, actually, they were very well networked on the photographer association. They have a really great discussion board online. And one of them just happened to post this and say, first of all, I'm frightened because this seems really menacing, but it just seems really shady, and I don't know how to investigate this. Someone else in that group said, I got the same thing. Someone else, I got the same thing. And they were able to piece it together and sort of discover that this isn't a real thing, not to panic about it, but some of them very panicked about it. So this is a real thing that's happening. I mean, it's complex, but it's so complex, it's actually kind of brilliant in a way, but it's also a little bit, I think it's morally repugnant. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's one aspect of the industry. Generally speaking, my perspective on reputation management businesses is they tend to be somewhat severely overpriced. Not all of them are, but in many cases, they can be very overpriced for what they actually can do for you. not that they do bad things, they just don't necessarily kind of price. They price for what it's worth. They know that you're panicked about the situation, so of course they're going to charge you the panic rate at the time of panic. And in many cases, actually, they do give that advice. They might do black hat SEO things or stuff fake reviews on the back end. So you have to be really careful when you're talking to them and say, I need you to tell me precisely what you're going to do. You don't have to tell me how you're going to do it, but I need you to tell me what you're going to do because I don't want you damaging my business when I paid you for it. I detailed in the book, there's a sort of set of a playbook. There's a toolkit that I detailed in there. I will run through it very, very briefly here. Just very actual tactical things that you can do. One is to know what review sites matter to you. You can't possibly be everywhere all the time. So by process of elimination, you can figure out, are my customers coming to me from Yelp? Are my customers coming to me from TripAdvisor? Or God bless, are they coming to me from the yellow pages? Thank God for now. You have to know where your effort is best invested because you can't do everything to a certain degree. Make every review, treat it like a little marketing thing. Make that review count. So just as the hotel way at the beginning replied to even the positive review and said, thank you, that is a marketing opportunity. So every review that you get, be it good, bad, or indifferent, thank them. If it's a bad review and they give you a specific thing, they say, I like this place, but I really wish the coffee were stronger, something that you can fix, say thank you. Thank them. Hopefully go fix it, but thank them for it. They will make them feel great for being heard and make you look like a hero for not, having a knee-jerk reaction and being kind of that jerk. The third is keep them fresh. So this is in the process of getting more reviews. You don't want to buy reviews. That's just not going to work for you, but you can solicit or ask for or suggest customers write reviews on different platforms, different ways of doing that, printing business cards or putting it in your email newsletter. A lot of hotels will send a follow-up after your stay and say, how was your stay, and would you be willing to write us a review on TripAdvisor? Different ways you can go about that. Fourth is, when you get that 5-star review, don't be shy don't just let it linger on that platform. You can post it on your Facebook page or put it in your email newsletter. Say, my favorite customer of the week was Laura, and she wrote me this 5-star review. I'm really proud of it. You kind of have to be true to yourself here when you do that. You don't want to be too braggy, but if you're a super braggy person, then why not go for it? So show off great reviews. And the last one is, not in every case can you solve these problems through these 5 steps. That's just the nature of the industry, nature of the business. So you kind of have to know when to seek help, where to seek it, and how to do it. Oftentimes, people will say, well, my first instinct is to call a lawyer because I want to sue this person for defamation of character, which I can just about tell you is like the wrong answer almost every time. Not every time, almost every time. But there are other ways of slicing that can work. You can flag things on Yelp. If you do it the right way, and it actually does qualify, you could get it removed. It's going to take a little time. One of my favorite resources, actually, if you suspect that you have issues with fake reviews, is if you're a member of inbound.org, inbound.org it's a discussion board and membership thing for marketing folks. That is a really great resource. It's a good place to collaborate with other marketing folks and say, this thing happened to me. I really think this was suspicious, but I can't verify. Does anyone have an idea? And you'll find a helpful crowd there. So you can get help from folks like that. I have a whole story about that I can share if you're interested. So those are the 5 steps that I detailed. I'll skip through those. The thing about this is, this really comes down to the customer relationship. And either you love your customers and want to do right by them, or you don't. And that becomes manifest very quickly in anywhere online. Yelp, if you're not authentic to yourself as a brand, that will become very quickly apparent. So if you behave in a way that keeps your customers close to you, you say, thank you for your critique. I heard you. We're going to make that change. I hope to see you again. You do things that look and behave like an actual human being, they will trust you, and other people will see that interaction and that story and trust you too. The thing is to just not panic about these. I mean, the bad reviews, you're going to take hits. I guarantee every brand in this room is going to take hits over the course of being in business. It's just the way it is. People like to be mean. But if you play your cards right, you can use those bad reviews as a marketing opportunity, but most certainly just count on the fact they're going to go away eventually. So that's really the end of it. I have time for questions now. I will be here today and also tomorrow if something happens to pop up. You're like, hey, I want to ask about that one thing. One thing I will say, I always like to ask, has anyone in here ever had an issue with fake reviews? Way in the back. Are you willing to share your experience? Yeah.
Doesn't even practice that law. And we got a bad review. I contact with Avon, and they was keep telling me that go back to the client and that they clarified, and be sure it was it was us.
So a law firm. This happened on Avo, which is a legal review site. It's where you review lawyers, and you suspected it was a fake review, so you went back and asked them to clarify things. And that's a really good tactic, actually, really smart way to do it. I mean, if you see a review and you say, this person I know did not shop in my store, I have never seen that person in my life. I know my customers. You're not going to win anything by saying that. All you say is, that just doesn't feel like something that I would have said, but if I did, I'm really sorry. Please give me a chance to fix it, or come back in. I will make it right. They're not. Of course, you're never going to hear from those people. Other customers see that interaction, that story, and that endures with you. I mean, they see that like, totally, that review is totally fake. But this person, look, they were even nice to the fake reviewer. That's a really good tactic. Yep. Oh. Oh, yeah, yep. Yes, they do. When their big money is on the line. So her question was, you have actual positive reviews, and other people suspect they're fake. I've never been asked that question before. Does anyone have any ideas? It's like a lesson in psychology, how you reply to some of these things. I would certainly reply to it and said, we're delighted you had such a positive experience, and maybe cite a specific thing. Like, we were happy to have you for several years as a tenant, and not give their identity away, but at least give enough that. Yeah, it's just so that the other people, they might still accuse you of it being fake, but there's at least a precedent there. Any other ideas for that? That's an interesting one. This is where colleagues can be very helpful. That's why I like that inbound group. That's a good question. That would be a great question to post there. Like, does anyone? How do others deal with a situation like this? Unusual. Other questions? Yep. Yep. Yeah, you could do that. You could seek the help of other tenants and say, hey, hop over to that profile real quick and just drop a note. That'd be helpful. Mm-hmm. Other questions? Yes? Yeah. Yep. I hear that story all the time. And sadly, Yelp has never, they've been accused of it repeatedly. They've always been acquitted of it. But I have heard that same story time and time again. And sometimes the answer is that the Yelp rep is calling and drawing attention to the Yelp profile. Maybe the business owner wasn't paying attention to it, and they assume they had like a 4 or 5 star rating on there, but they actually didn't. And then of course they're now paying attention to it. They're like, gosh, they're hiding all of these great reviews. But I've also heard exactly the way you describe it, where you had a 4 or 5, 4.5 star profile, get a call from the Yelp salesperson, and suddenly things went downhill. I don't know the answer to that. All I can say is, whether you like them or not, kind of get back on the Yelp horse. You don't have to pay them for it, but certainly try to get some more reviews on there. They actually give a thing away. They don't give much away for free, but one of the things they will allow you to do is run a check-in offer on Yelp. So and you can do it for free. So you can say, if you check in on Yelp at our location, you'll get whatever, 10% off or something, some special offer. And the thing that's good about that is the people who check in on Yelp are generally its most active users. So if you really focus on going above and beyond in that situation with them, they check in and you just give them an amazing experience, their reviews are much more likely to stick on your profile for a while because they're pretty active on Yelp already. They're the influencers on Yelp. So that's a good way to kind of pull in without having to pay Yelp for its influencer pool, which is something you can also do, but you can kind of get access to it through the check-in offer. I hear that all the time, and it kind of goes back to that profiteering thing. Like, what master are they really serving there? And most of us, I think, would agree or believe it's themselves, but that's just my jaded perspective. Other questions? Yep.
So when you wrote a business book and it was listed on Amazon, hard copy, sales went nowhere. You then converted it to an ebook and you sold it for 99 cents. Basically meant he gave it away.
Yep.
And then sales rocketed to the #1 best-selling business book on Amazon, which I guess technically it was because it sold for 99 cents, but he gained the system. And now as a consultant, he now claims that he had the #1 best-selling business book on leadership on Amazon. So how does Amazon filter through stuff like that? I mean, 99 cents, you gave it away.
Yeah, I mean, there's free books on Amazon that could be bestsellers too. Yeah. I don't know that Amazon really cares. I mean, they're just in the commerce business. In his case, he was playing their own game to a degree, and it's like, good for you. If that's the thing that matters, hitting the bestseller list, then do it. And that's sort of the model.
Yeah, he used that to leverage his consulting practice.
Yeah. I know a lot of people who have done that. They self-publish a book on Amazon, and they play some shady back-end games to get it positioned to be a bestseller, and they do it. And that, is that moral? I don't know. My moral compass would say that points a little bit like sideways, but it could go a lot worse, right? At least he's not getting fake reviews and paying for those. So it comes down to, would you want your mother to know that you did that? That's always the metric. My mom can be quite judgy sometimes. God bless her. So I always use that metric. But other questions? Well, great. Well, I think we're wrapped up.